the path alone. Now with memory to guide us, give us strength to find our way. Grant us courage to remember and to grow. Hamakom yunachem etchem, Hamakom yunachem etchem, Hamakom yunachem etchem, B'tog shehar avilei Zion v'Yerushalayim.
We are gathered here today to honor the life and memory of Gertrude Kahn and to join our hearts together to bring comfort and strength to her family. Death has come to Gert as it does to all persons. It brings to our minds and hearts the common concerns and shared destiny of humankind. We are drawn together by deep-felt emotions and are reminded of the essential community that lies beneath the many divisions of humanity on earth. Our lives and the lives of our loved ones are rooted in profound mystery, past our understanding. In the face of eternity, we are made simple. Though we know our destiny is to tarry but a while, the time of separation brings anguish and grief. May we bear our burden bravely. May we struggle through the darkness with courage to find our way again. We begin our service with a recitation of poetry, psalms, and prayers, linking Gert's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Eshet Chayil mi yimtza, a woman of valor who can find. A good wife who can find. Her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and nothing shall he lack. She renders him good and not evil all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is robed in strength and dignity and cheerfully faces whatever may come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She tends to the affair of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband too, and he praises her. Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Place before her the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. L'kol zman ve'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. There is a time for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for destroying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping and a time for laughing, a time for wailing and a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones, a time for embracing and a time for refraining from embraces, a time for seeking and a time for losing, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for tearing and a time for sowing, a time for silence and a time for speaking, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for war and a time for peace. Adonai, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft, on a lonely journey. But you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures, as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. At this time, we have the honor of hearing from many of Gert's family members. I'd like to first call forward Susan to share some thoughts on her mom.
Today we celebrate Gertrude Kahn's life because that's what she would want for all of us here. She loved the times when she was together with family and friends, whether having a meal together or celebrating special occasions. She lived a long and full life, and not always an easy one. She survived the Holocaust and built a beautiful life alongside the love of her life, my dad. Many of you knew her as a friend. She was a beloved wife, devoted daughter, sister and mother, an aunt, grandmother, and a great-grandmother. Her dear older sister, Ilsa, passed away earlier this year after celebrating her 99th birthday. These two wolf women were definitely tough women. Mom was a woman of valor. My beautiful mother had a heart of gold. When friends of hers passed away, she reached out to their children and became like a mother to them. When Russian immigrants arrived in Dayton, she did everything she could to help them get settled, as she remembered how hard it was for her and my dad when they first came to this country. Mom was quick-witted, had a terrific sense of humor, and was a giver rather than a taker, always unpretentious and never focusing the spotlight on herself, but always on others. She was warm, loving, and caring, and always took time to listen. As the family grew, she welcomed all with open arms and love, including spouses who became her children and grandchildren. She had regular mahjong games with lifelong friends. I can still hear the click, click, click of the tiles, and if I was lucky, she would give me a few of the chocolate nonpareil candies that she always had on hand for her friends. Over the years, she became friends with neighbors, and many of these friendships flourished throughout her life. These friends, neighbors, and acquaintances lovingly helped Mom and Dad take care of things around their home when they no longer could. These friends continued to call, send cards, and came to visit even when my parents moved to Kettering. They lent support and kindness when Mom became ill, and to these very special people, we can never express our gratitude to you. In recent weeks, I told her that she was the best mother a child could ever have, and that if I had to go to the mommy store to choose a mom, I would pick her. My mom was a bit of a prankster from the very start. In Germany, before she was born, her parents were hoping to have a boy. They already had a 3-year-old daughter, and they were going to name the boy Gerd. But Mom fooled them and turned out to be Gertrude. That wouldn't be the last time she tricked them. She also shared with me when growing up that her formal dining room in Germany was a museum, since she and her sister weren't allowed to go in there. But she would sneak in when she was mad at her mother, and she would turn around the paintings, especially the one of her mother. The pranks continued once she changed the time on the grandfather clock to 12 so that the clock would continuously ring for 12 times. Another time, she was supposed to be the flower girl at her aunt's wedding, but instead she locked herself in the bathroom because she knew her grandmother Emma would make her eat peas. She and Ilsa would put bubble powder into their parents' chamber pot, and when they used it, it bubbled up. Once at the movie theater, she saw a man on the screen sitting in a bathtub, and she stood up because she said she wanted to see more. In 1938, when Mom was 13, her parents realized it was time to leave Germany, but the family's high immigration number meant that they were in for a very long wait. In order to keep Gert and Ilsa safe, their parents sent their 2 young daughters on a Kindertransport train to London without them. Her parents finally made it to London with the aid of Uncle Richard and was later united with the family in Lawrence, Massachusetts. They had very few worldly possessions, but they were alive. They were the lucky ones, and throughout her life, Mom never took that freedom for granted. After finishing school, she moved to Richmond, Virginia to work as a nanny. While volunteering as a hostess at the USO, she was dancing with a sailor when a young, handsome man in uniform cut in, and that dance lasted over 75 years. From the beginning, my dad nicknamed her Goldfish and called her that for the rest of her life. After the war, Gert and Bob were married and they moved to Dayton, where Dad had a job at the Air Force Base. Ron was the firstborn. I came along 3 years later, and I'm not sure how it happened, but I got a baby sister, Karen, who turned out to be a bit of a prankster like Mom. As my parents were deprived of many things during their childhood, they made it a point to take family vacations and do things as a family. Mom worked at Elder Bierman's at a time when not many mothers were working, so that she could add to that rainy day fund that helped to pay for vacations and put three children through college. She continued to work there for many years and loved to use her employee discount to purchase clothing and toys, especially for her grandchildren. Just a few more memories I'd like to share. I once asked Mom who her heartthrob was, and she responded, "Sorry, Dad, I wouldn't mind finding Frank Sinatra's shoes under my bed." She was an immaculate housekeeper, as I recall waking up every morning and she was dusting away. Even in her later years at Lincoln Park, there was not a speck of dust to be found anywhere. In 1996, Mom gave to each of us a copy of her memoirs. Below the title, she added a Ziggy cartoon that foreshadowed her loving legacy. It said, "The great thing about preserving your memories is that they never spoil. No matter how long you keep them, they just get better with age." She wrote, "I dedicate my memories to you, your children, and future generations." She continued, "Life passes by very quickly. Enjoy each day. Through the years, you have brought sunshine into my heart. Continue to bring happiness to those whom you love, and may all of your dreams come true." Thank you, Mom, for always bringing beautiful sunshine into all of our lives, and for making us all feel loved.
Mom, thank you for being such a loving, concerned, nurturing, and attentive mother. Always there to listen, console, and guide. You'll always remain in my thoughts as to what is good, proper, and above all, what is kind and what is compassionate. You always led by example. Now it is our turn to continue what you taught us. Watch your husband, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren joyfully from above as we will grow, mature, and spread kindness and love as you have always done. You'll always be in our prayers, our thoughts, and in our hearts. Rest peacefully, my beloved Mom.
So obviously I'm not Karen. This is Karen. I'm Karen's husband, Ira, and I'm going to read a speech that she wrote. I am Karen Weiss, Gert's youngest child, and secretly known to her as Katrinka. The sadness and loss I feel right now is overwhelming, but at the same time, my feelings of supreme gratitude are immense. To the countless lifelong friends of both my parents and my entire family, the loving staff at One Lincoln Park, the caring aides and staff at Home Instead, and the selfless nurses and aides from ProMedica Hospice, you made the long journey to this day one filled with kindness, selflessness, professionalism, and love. Some of you never knew the real Gert, but you treated her with compassion and dignity. For this, I thank you.
My mom was a concierge of beauty. She found happiness in the most simplest of life's pleasures. As many of you know, my mom had a green thumb. Her happiest moments were spent tending to her flower beds, and as she would say, playing in the dirt. I have a vision right now of the freshly cut roses in the multiple crystal cut vases that routinely adorned our home. So simple, fragrant, exquisitely colored, opening their petals slowly to the sunlight. Today, as I think of all of my mom's many virtues, roses come to mind. Red symbolizing the love and romance she shared with my dad for nearly 75 years. Pink representing her grace, admiration, joy, and the gratitude she had for being spared. Orange for her enthusiasm and passion. Yellow, friendship, and her cheerfulness. White, innocence and purity. Peach signifying her modesty and sincerity in everything she did. Cream representing her thoughtfulness, charm, and perfection. Mom, I want to thank you today for caring, nurturing, and protecting me as if I were your most precious rose.
I'm Eliza Lambert, so I'm Karen's youngest daughter and Gertrude's granddaughter. And I have two speeches today. One is from my sister Jenna, who lives in California, who wanted so badly to be here. Oma was the kind of grandmother that created beautiful childhood memories for her grandchildren that will never be forgotten. I'd love to share a few of those memories today. Oma was passionate about gardening, and her garden was simply magical. In the summers, we would pick and eat the most delicious cucumbers and tomatoes from her vegetable garden. Watch the hummingbirds and butterflies fly from flower to flower and stare up at the giant sunflowers towering over us. Oma loved knitting and knitted blankets, scarves, hats, and gloves for all her grandchildren for every important milestone in life. When I was born, she knitted me a beautiful rainbow blanket. My mother, Karen, kept this blanket and gave it to me for my daughter when she was born. Now Oma's great-granddaughter, Noah, has a piece of Oma with her, and we plan to pass on Oma's blanket to her great-great-grandchildren one day. Oma, thank you for being the best grandmother anyone could ask for. I will miss your warmth, smile, and laugh, and know a little piece of you will be with me every time I eat a tomato or cucumber and snuggle with my daughter and our shared rainbow blanket. So this is from all of the grandchildren. Growing up, each grandchild remembers trips to our grandparents' house. We remember special food, feeding their elephants, and playing in their garden. A fond time was always right before bed. We remember lying in bed and getting tucked in by Oma and Opa. Oma and Opa used to sit on our beds and tell us a bedtime story. These bedtime stories were called Hunkle Dunkle stories. There was something special about them. We felt like we were physically transported through magical lands of make-believe. Some included elephant adventures and magic carpet rides. These stories always made us have the sweetest dreams. It seems only appropriate to deliver a Hunkle Dunkle story to Oma now. To help her have sweet dreams. A Hunkle Dunkle story for our Oma. There was a young girl who lit up the world with mischief, laughter, and brown little curls. She conquered monsters and fought for her right to be a Jewish child and live out her life. Her uncle sent for her family where she traveled abroad. She escaped, but nearly, and always thanked God. Her and her sister were two partners in crime, always together, enjoying their time. One day, this beautiful girl went to a USO dance. Little did she know she would embark on 75 years of romance. There she met the man of her dreams, with whom she enmeshed her fabric, and together they sewed up their seams. They bore 3 children out of love and hope for a bright future, filled with sunflowers, elephants, and laughter, I assure. Their 3 beautiful children grew into budding adults, a doctor, nutritionist, and an artist. Such nachas through them all. Each child had children of their own, 7 grandchildren in total. Look at the seeds this couple had sown. The grandchildren filled their house with pride. It brimmed with joy, laughter, and love from inside. These grandchildren moved all across the states. They graduated, grew up, and had much to celebrate. Like 5 more children and one on the way, this girl's legacy had grown and will never go away. The ripples this girl made were 96 years strong, touching the lives of many and making sure everyone belonged. To her family that she grew and grew, Oma, my heart fills to tell you, this girl is you. This may be a Hunkle-Dunkle story for the ages, and we promise your legacy will continue to fill up our pages.
In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given us a loved one who will never be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. There's an unusual midrash about King David. The legend tells us that David, worried about the future, prays to God to know when he would die. God, however, refused to do so, as such knowledge would be forbidden to mortal beings. However, David continued to pray and urged God to reveal to him the day of his death. Finally, God relented and informed David that he would die on Shabbat. And then the legend teaches David was content. We might well ask ourselves, why was David content to die on the Sabbath or any other day of the week? For really, can death at any time be a source of contentment? It is unlikely that our sages meant to tell us that death itself was considered something good. Rather, they were trying to teach us something else using the symbolic language. And we can find some comfort in knowing that someone has died on the Sabbath of their life. In our tradition, Sunday marks the beginning of the week. It is Yom Rishon, the first day. Sunday also represents the beginning of oneself, before one is able to leave their mark on the world. When a person dies on the Sunday of their life, it is horribly tragic. However, if a person has lived a full life, filled with worthwhile accomplishments, and has had the opportunity to pass on to dear ones a sense of values based on the lessons that one has learned from their life, then death comes as the close of a worthwhile and meaningful life. Gertrude Kahn died on the Sabbath of her life at age 96 after a long, full, and active life. Most of Gert's life was spent side by side with her devoted husband, Bob. When they were dating, Bob shared that he always looked forward to hearing her sweet voice and seeing her adorable, angelic smile. The two of them were madly in love their entire lives. Bob recently revealed a secret, which was the secret to his incredible 75-year marriage to Gert. I hope it's okay if I share this. Every night, they would hold hands as they fell asleep. They let any disagreements disappear, and in those moments, their love for each other would transfer between them for as long as they were married. So long as they were holding hands, negative thoughts would evaporate from their minds. Even if they went to bed at different times, especially when Bob was working on his book, they never missed an opportunity for this intimate display of love for each other. In his book, Bob wrote, "If we couldn't reshape the entire world into harmony, peace, and happiness, we would certainly try to build that kind of world immediately around us." And they did. They brought harmony, peace, and happiness to all they encountered, especially Gert. She loved everyone. She was kind to everyone, always. Bob wrote, Gertrude, and this is for the obituary that came out today, Gertrude made friends easily. She had a charming personality which acted like a magnet to everyone she came in contact with. If Gert was your friend, she was your friend for life. This extended to her children's friends, as we heard, being like a second mom to some of them after her friends were no longer alive. And she loved spending time with her friends. She loved being at the JCC pool, on a shopping spree for downtown Dayton Day, playing mahjong, feeding the penny slots at a casino, and playing tennis. She loved music and dancing and entertaining. She was never ostentatious, but she loved diamonds. Apparently, being the month of April was her birthday, so that's apparently very appropriate. And of course, she loved her discounted elder beerman. Her family also shares that she enjoyed a Kahlua and ice cream before bed. Now that is a tradition I can get behind. Her family shared with me that Gert was she was the one who cemented the family together. Bob always appreciated how she honored her parents and Bob's equally. She set the example for her children and what it means to honor one's parents. As a mother, Gert was incredibly wise and a wonderful listener. She was also a loyal taxi driver, ensuring that everyone was able to be where they needed to be and on time. She took pride in keeping a meticulously clean home and always welcomed visitors. Karen shared memories of her mom pushing her on the vacuum as they listened to Broadway shows like South Pacific. With everything she did, she made it fun, and she turned it into an adventure. Her grandchildren recall the adventure in her home where when they would go to the bathroom, apparently she had connected the light to the bathroom so that it would now play music whenever it would be turned on. And as apparently she was losing her hearing, it got louder and louder. It was quite the experience. Gertrude absolutely loved being a grandmother and was so excited to meet her newest great-grandchild. She would sit for hours, smiling at the beautiful pictures that her family would send to her tablet. Gert, as we heard, made each of the grandchildren, a baby blanket. And when they went off to college, she would make a large Afghan for them as well in their school colors. I believe it was Cameron who said he remembered wrapping Gert up in blankets like a burrito when she would get cold, so I think blankets are a recurring theme. But Gert was always creating something with her hands, even when she was relaxing. Gertrude's granddaughter, Eliza, shared that she, Adam, and I think pretty much all of Gert's other grandchildren inherited their grandmother's spilkies because they can never stay still. They too need to be doing something productive at all times. Gert was always attentive to the small details that helped everyone feel special and at ease and so much loved. She recognized every birthday, every anniversary, and any opportunity to celebrate. She was the first to celebrate anything. She lived her life thankfully. She never forgot that she was spared from being one of the 6 million Jews who were murdered by the Nazis. She never forgot the miracle of how she was saved through the Kindertransport. The charm bracelet that she wore at that time has been passed on to the next generation, a physical reminder that miracles can happen. While she wasn't particularly observant as a Jew, Gertrude was filled with faith. With everything she did, she tried to make things better and easier for others than it had been on her and her family. This is part of why she was so passionate in her work to resettle the Russian Jewish community. She was just so generous. She was much more interested in giving than taking. She never sought recognition for her many good deeds. She had a heart of gold when it came to charitable causes. Gert and Bob had been temple members for 74 years. And all of the goodness that she has given to the community, she also, in turn, gave through us. She was the one responsible for knitting and crocheting countless scarves, mittens, and gloves for the needy on behalf of our community. And I was reminded a little bit earlier that inside of our ark there's a beautiful cover that says L'Ador Vador, from generation to generation. That was a gift that was given on behalf of the Kahns. As we can hear in all that we know with the family and the importance of each generation, that such a tribute, such a lasting legacy from generation to generation should be reminded, that we should be reminded of it at all times in our sanctuary, is really an honor to us, and we thank you. As Bob included in the obituary, Gert will be remembered by her extended family for the unselfish dedication, love, and kindness which is emulated by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to make this a better world. Gert was all around a wonderful nurturer to loved ones and those in need, but really to most everything. As we heard, she loved to garden and sow seeds. She appreciated beauty, and it surrounded her, especially nature. She loved the outdoors, created beautiful gardens with a variety of flowers to attract hummingbirds and butterflies. She was definitely a sun child. She loved to be in the sunlight. She loved everything having to do with the sunlight. It was as if she herself was solar powered. It energized her. We are told that those who sow in tears will reap in joy. And I feel that that is much how Gertrude lived her life. She never complained. She lived joyfully. Of all the many essential things that she had to take with her, such as clothes, when she went on the kinder transport, she chose to bring her accordion, which is on display at the Air Force Museum. It was a sign of good things. She had an infectious laugh. Her family says that her whole face would smile when she laughed, and she loved laughing. She was quick-witted, she had a wonderful sense of humor, and she used her humor to help put people at ease. And food. She used food to put people at ease as well. She loved to show how much she cared for you through food. I believe Karen's dog appreciated this the most, as she would often accidentally give the dog table food. But Gert would make sure that she had on hand all of your favorite foods. She was what they called a professional freezer. I think it was even Emily's matzah that she ate year-round. She would make sure to have on hand. Ronald remembers she would make his favorite roast when he would visit from college. And Adam, I think it was, shared that she would even freeze, as she would call it, chick-a-fil, and an Arby's roast beef sandwiches just so she could defrost them and have them on hand for him. I know that Ira shared he was especially grateful for his onion allergy because it meant that he got his own generous portion of stuffing at Thanksgiving. She was notorious for her Hanukkah cookies and the hundreds that she would bake and send. And those with smaller families appreciated that she sent the same amount to everyone. But she never shared her recipe secrets. She never shared that perhaps her matzo balls may have included a mix, or perhaps her perfectly sweet strawberries might have been artificially sweetened. But some of her recipes, the more elaborate ones, like her plum pies, they are big keepers, and they have been passed down, and I know, Susan, you make them already. I was told that one of the things that Gertrude often did was to emulate her Oma wolf, which was not her Oma, but Oma wolf, by waving a white handkerchief when she would leave, when anyone would depart. And so I think as we imagine right now that we are saying goodbye to Gertrude, I think we all can imagine ourselves holding that white handkerchief and waving it towards her in love. Gert was a sweet and loving woman. She was blessed with a good heart and a good nature. She was generous to family and helpful to all. Gert died on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, which to this day is the wish of every loyal Jew. And she was blessed by the fact that she did in the Sabbath of her life, after a long, a busy, and a full lifetime. As Gert would say, that's the long and the short of it. Zichrona livracha, her memory will continue to be a blessing in our midst, as we say. Amen. At this time, I invite you to take just a few moments for your own silent reflection on the many blessings that Gert's life bestowed upon us all. Time we rise for the traditional words of El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim shochen bamromim amzim nucha nuchonat achar chanvi chashchina im grushim uterim gezuhar harakim Mazirim et nishmat gitobet ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen.
Fully compassionate God on high, to our loved one who has entered eternity, grant her clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold her in the embrace of your wings. Secure her soul in eternity. Adonai, she is yours. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. At this time, we'd like to call the pallbearers forward.